All right, let's dive straight into the depths of time, back when the oceans were ruled by creatures that would make even today's great whites look like little guppies. You see, stingrays and manta rays aren't just your average fish. They are evolutionary masterpieces, ancient relics of a time when the world was a much wilder, scarier place. Imagine this. You're swimming in an ocean, but instead of familiar dolphins and clownfish, you're surrounded by nightmare fuel giant armored fish with saw-like teeth, enormous sea scorpions the size of a dog, and sharks that look like something a sleep-deprived mad scientist doodled at 3 a.m. And right in the middle of all that chaos, the ancestors of today's rays gliding around like they own the place. Rays are part of a VIP club in the fish world called elasmobranches, which includes their close cousins, the sharks. And when I say close, I mean like siblings who borrowed each other's clothes for millions of years close. Scientists believe rays evolved from ancient sharks more than 150 million years ago, possibly earlier. That means they were already cruising around the ocean when dinosaurs were still figuring out how to walk without tripping over their own tails. Now, the early versions of rays, they were like sharks that had decided, you know what? I'm tired of swimming like a torpedo. Let's just flatten out and chill on the ocean floor instead. Over time, their pectoral fins grew wider. Their bodies became pancake-shaped. And instead of chasing down prey like their shark cousins, many of them opted for a sneakier lifestyle, lying in wait like the ocean's most patient assassins. And speaking of sneak attacks, let's talk about the prehistoric stingray relatives. Some of these guys were absolute monsters. Ever heard of Helicoprion? It was a shark relative from the Permian period that had a literal buzzsaw of teeth spiraling out of its lower jaw like a nightmare blender. Now, we don't have direct evidence that rays descended from this particular freak of nature, but it just goes to show how weird the evolutionary lineup was. But the real OG of the stingray world, Titanichthys, this bad boy swam the Devonian seas about 380 million years ago, looking like a manta ray, but with armor plating thick enough to make a knight jealous. Unlike its more famous distant cousin, the Dunkleosteus, who was basically a living can opener with fins, Titanichthys was likely a filter feeder, gliding through the water with its mouth wide open, scooping up whatever tiny creatures it could get. Fast forward a few million years, and by the time the Jurassic period rolls in, the ocean is packed with a whole new lineup of prehistoric sharks and rays. And here's where things start getting spicy. True rays begin to separate from their shark-like ancestors, developing distinct body shapes, specialized jaws for crushing shellfish, and, of course, the infamous stingray barb, which would eventually turn into one of nature's most notorious self-defense weapons. But here's the funny thing. Early stingrays were basically prehistoric sushi platters for anything with a big enough mouth. If you think today's rays have it rough dodging predators, imagine living in a time when marine reptiles like Mosasaurus were patrolling the waters. Yeah, that's right. The giant sea lizard from Jurassic World? That was a real thing. And it absolutely would have snacked on stingray ancestors like they were crunchy little appetizers. And then, just when the rays thought they had things figured out, boom, asteroid. You know, the one that turned the dinosaurs into fossils. While T-Rex and Triceratops were having the worst day of their lives, our stingray ancestors were probably like, hey, guess we'll just chill at the bottom of the ocean. And guess what? It worked. While the big boys of the prehistoric world were getting wiped out, stingrays and their relatives survived, proving that sometimes lying low and minding your own business is the ultimate survival strategy. Now, let's talk about adaptations, because stingrays and mantas didn't just survive, they thrived. Over millions of years, they evolved smoother, more aerodynamic bodies, better camouflage, and in the case of stingrays, an even deadlier stinger. Manta rays, on the other hand, took a different approach. They said, what if we get massive, lose the sting, and just glide around looking majestic instead? And that's exactly what they did. Today, rays are found in almost every ocean on the planet. Some stingrays have even taken their talents to freshwater, swimming up rivers and scaring the absolute life out of people who just wanted to take a peaceful swim. And manta rays? They're like the ocean's version of a spaceship. Massive, graceful, and moving with a kind of effortless beauty that makes everything else in the sea look like it's trying too hard. So, what's the secret to their success? Flexibility. Not just in their bodies, but in their survival strategies. Some rays use electric shocks, others bury themselves in the sand like underwater ninjas, and some, like the spotted eagle ray, can literally launch themselves out of the water like a skipping stone just because they feel like it. Evolution didn't just make rays survivors, it made them some of the most fascinating, adaptable, and downright coolest creatures in the ocean. And we're only just getting started with their story. All right, buckle up, because now we're shifting gears from the ancient, armored ancestors of rays to the ocean's most majestic gliders, manta rays. If stingrays are the stealthy assassins of the sea, then mantas are the graceful ballet dancers, floating through the ocean with wingspans that can reach up to 29 feet. That's bigger than most cars. Heck, that's bigger than your living room. But here's the kicker. These massive creatures are completely harmless. No stingers, no venom, no teeth capable of turning you into sushi. They just cruise around, filter feeding on tiny plankton like the ocean's biggest, most sophisticated vacuum cleaners. And yet for centuries, sailors thought they were monsters. Imagine you're a 16th century sailor, probably dehydrated, definitely covered in questionable amounts of sea salt, and suddenly this gigantic shadow glides beneath your ship. You don't know it's just a chill manta ray. You think it's some kind of kraken light coming to flip your boat over like Poseidon's frisbee. People literally thought mantas could drag ships underwater with their giant wings. Spoiler alert, they cannot. But they do have a superpower that still baffles scientists today. See those weird flappy things sticking out of a manta's face? Those are called cephalic lobes, and they work like a built-in funnel system, helping them scoop up plankton as they glide through the water. It's like having a pair of hands on your face that constantly guide food into your mouth. Now, if that's not an evolutionary flex, I don't know what is. And speaking of flexing, manta rays are smart, like way smarter than anyone gave them credit for. Scientists have tested their cognitive abilities, and guess what? They recognize themselves in mirrors. That's right, manta rays can pass the self-awareness test, something even some primates struggle with. So while you're out here wondering if your dog understands his own reflection, mantas are out in the deep having existential crises. But intelligence isn't their only weapon. Mantas also know how to party. Ever seen those viral videos of mantas doing giant flips out of the water, like the ocean's version of Tony Hawk? No one's entirely sure why they do it. Some say it's a way to get rid of parasites. Others say it's part of their mating rituals. And some scientists even believe they do it just because they can. When you're 20 feet wide and weigh 2 tons, why not launch yourself into the sky just to see what happens? Now let's talk about 2 different species of manta rays. The reef manta ray, the small one, only 10 to 15 feet across, and the giant oceanic manta ray, which is basically the 747 jet of the fish world. Both of them have massive brains compared to other fish, both of them are filter feeders, and both of them have a sense of style, literally. Each manta ray has a unique pattern of spots on its belly, kind of like a fingerprint, making it easier for scientists to identify individuals. But here's where things get even wilder. Manta rays have migratory routes longer than most people's annual vacations. Some travel thousands of miles across open ocean, just gliding, vibing, and looking for the best plankton buffets. And unlike stingrays, which are bottom dwellers, mantas stay up in the water column, coasting through the sea like the chillest private jets in nature. Unfortunately, even these peaceful giants aren't safe from the ultimate villain of the ocean, humans. Manta rays are threatened by overfishing, habitat destruction, and worst of all, the absurd belief that their gill plates have magical healing properties. Spoiler alert, again, they don't. But that hasn't stopped illegal fishing industries from targeting mantas, pushing their populations into dangerous territory. Luckily, conservation efforts are on the rise, and more people are realizing that protecting these creatures is way cooler than turning them into useless medicine. Manta sanctuaries are popping up worldwide, and more diving hotspots are prioritizing eco-friendly tourism so that future generations can still witness these gentle giants in their natural habitat. So what's next? Well, if manta rays are graceful giants gliding through the sea, then stingrays are the sneaky, sand-loving ninjas of the ocean. And oh boy, do they have some tricks up their flattened sleeves. All right, now that we've basked in the elegant glow of manta rays, it's time to switch things up. We're diving into the stealthy world of stingrays, the ninja assassins of the ocean floor. If manta rays are the ocean's graceful ballroom dancers, stingrays are the quiet, lurking hitmen that you don't notice until it's too late. Here's the thing about stingrays, they don't want to hurt you. Despite their deadly reputation, stingrays are like that one chill friend who just wants to be left alone, lying low in the sand, not bothering anybody. But if you step on them, oh boy, that's when the trouble starts. Let's talk about the barb. the legendary weapon that makes stingrays one of the most feared creatures in shallow waters. This isn't just some flimsy little spike. It's a razor-sharp, venomous blade attached to their tail, designed for one thing and one thing only: self-defense. And when I say razor-sharp, I mean it can go straight through bone. You think getting a splinter is bad? Imagine stepping on a living dagger that injects venom into your foot. That's a stingray sting. But let's get one thing straight. Stingrays don't attack people on purpose. They're not out here lurking in the shadows, waiting for their next victim like some underwater serial killer. In fact, the only reason they sting humans is because we accidentally step on them. And to be fair, if someone stepped on you while you were taking a nap, you'd probably react aggressively too. That's why divers and swimmers are taught to do the stingray shuffle, basically dragging your feet along the sand instead of stepping normally, so the stingrays feel you coming and GTFO before you accidentally step on them. It's like knocking before entering their house. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, but what about Steve Irwin? Yeah, we have to talk about that. Steve Irwin's death was a freak accident, plain and simple. He wasn't just splashing around like an oblivious tourist. He was filming a documentary, and the stingray he encountered felt cornered. It didn't just sting him. It reacted in full-blown panic mode, whipping its tail up multiple times and hitting him right in the heart. That's about as unlucky as it gets. Most people who get stung by stingrays survive. It's painful, yes, but not fatal unless you get hit in a really bad spot. Unfortunately, Steve got hit in the worst possible place. But let's be real, Steve Irwin loved stingrays. He wouldn't want people to see them as monsters because of what happened to him. He knew better than anyone that stingrays are gentle creatures who only attack when they feel threatened. And honestly, if you're just out there minding your own business, they won't bother you at all. Now let's switch gears for a second, because not all stingrays are the same. Some of them are tiny, some of them are huge, and some of them have superpowers you won't believe. Ever heard of the giant freshwater stingray? This thing is an absolute unit. It can grow up to 16 feet long, weigh over 1,300 pounds, and is basically a living pancake the size of a car. It lives in rivers in Southeast Asia, and despite being one of the largest freshwater fish on Earth, people barely ever see it because it's so good at hiding. It's like the Loch Ness Monster, except real. And then there's the electric ray, a stingray's weird cousin who decided, you know what, instead of stabbing my enemies, I'm just going to electrocute them. Yep, electric rays can generate shocking amounts of voltage, enough to stun prey or even knock out a human. Imagine stepping on a stingray and getting tasered instead of stung. That's an electric ray experience. And let's not forget the spotted eagle ray, which is basically a stingray with style. These things are so sleek, so fast, and so effortlessly cool that they literally fly out of the water. Why? No one really knows. Some say it's to escape predators. Others say it's to get rid of parasites. I personally think they just like to flex on us. Now you might be wondering, why do stingrays even have venom? What does it do? Great question. Stingray venom is not meant to kill. It's meant to teach a lesson. It's excruciatingly painful, designed to make sure that whatever stepped on the stingray never tries it again. It's like a do not touch sign, but with intense burning agony. The venom causes swelling, muscle cramps, and sometimes nausea, but it's usually not fatal unless you're hit in a vital area. So yeah, stingrays don't want to kill you. They just want you to back off. And guess what? It works. Most predators, even sharks, avoid messing with stingrays because nobody wants to deal with that kind of pain. So what have we learned? Stingrays are not killers. They're just very defensive pancakes. Their venom is nature's way of saying, do not disturb. Some rays can electrocute you, others can fly, and some are just straight up dinosaurs. If you're swimming in shallow water, do the stingray shuffle. Seriously. Now, if you thought stingrays were sneaky, just wait until you hear about the deep sea rays, the abyssal creatures that lurk in the darkest depths of the ocean, where sunlight dares not go. That's next. And trust me, things are about to get weird. All right. We've covered the graceful manta rays and the sneaky, dagger-tailed assassins known as stingrays. But if you thought we were done with surprises, strap in, because now we're heading to the deep sea. And trust me, things down there get real weird, real fast. Welcome to the Midnight Zone, the part of the ocean so deep that sunlight doesn't even bother showing up. Down here it's cold, pitch black, and full of nightmare fuel. The water pressure is so intense it could turn a normal fish into a pancake. And yet, despite the crushing darkness, some of the strangest stingray relatives have adapted to thrive in this extreme environment. Meet the abyssal ghost rays. Yes, that's their actual name, and yes, they sound like something from a horror movie. These deep-sea relatives of stingrays are so rare and elusive that we barely know anything about them. They've been spotted at depths of over 6,000 feet, where the ocean is basically just a black hole full of secrets. Now, if you're wondering what the heck a ghost ray looks like, imagine a stingray that's gone full stealth mode. Pale, almost translucent, and with oversized eyes that make it look permanently shocked. It's like nature couldn't decide whether to make it cute or terrifying, so it just split the difference. But ghost rays aren't even the weirdest thing lurking in the deep. Oh no, because here's where things take a turn for the outright bizarre. Ever heard of chimeras? No, not the fire-breathing lion-snake-goat hybrid from Greek mythology, although that would be cool. I'm talking about real chimeras, sometimes called ghost sharks, ratfish, or spookfish. These things are some of the closest living relatives of stingrays and sharks, and they look like something an alien biologist would design. Chimeras have a shark-like body, but with a long, thin tail that looks like it belongs to a rat. Big, bulging eyes that glow in the dark like headlights. A weird, rabbit-like mouth that makes them look constantly judging you. A venomous spine on their dorsal fin, because why not? And here's the real kicker. They haven't changed much in over 300 million years. Yep. While humans were out here evolving from primates and inventing Wi-Fi, these guys just shrugged and said, "Nah, we're good." They were built for survival long before dinosaurs were a thing, and they're still gliding around the deep sea like ancient, deep-dwelling weirdos. And just when you think deep-sea rays can't get any freakier, bam, bioluminescence. That's right. Some deep-sea rays can literally glow in the dark. Now, glowing in the deep sea isn't just for show. It's all about survival. Some rays glow from their bellies to blend in with the faint light from above, making it harder for predators below to see them. Others use flashes of light to communicate, like some kind of underwater Morse code. And then, of course, there are the rays that just disappear entirely. No, I'm not joking. Some deep-sea rays have almost see-through bodies that make them nearly invisible in the depths. It's like evolution gave them a permanent cloaking device. So, to recap, some deep-sea rays glow like underwater fireflies. Some are nearly invisible because, why not? And some are literal prehistoric leftovers that have refused to change for millions of years. Honestly, the deep sea is basically an alien planet on Earth. Scientists are still discovering new species of rays down there, and who knows what kind of nightmare creatures are lurking even deeper. But let's come back up for a second, because while these deep-sea freaks are out here breaking the laws of nature, there's a different kind of stingray that's been making a name for itself by showing up where it's not supposed to be. That's right. We're talking about the invasion of freshwater stingrays. And trust me, things are about to get even more chaotic. All right, time to shake things up. Because now we're talking about stingrays that don't care about your ocean boundaries and have decided to move into fresh water instead. Yeah, that's right. Stingrays aren't just ocean creatures anymore. Some of them have pulled a full-on reverse aerial, left the sea and said, "Screw salt water, I'm a river monster now." And honestly, they're thriving. Let me introduce you to the freshwater stingrays of South America, a group of absolute units that have adapted to life in rivers, lakes, and swamps. Unlike their ocean-dwelling cousins, these stingrays don't need salt to survive. They've figured out how to regulate their internal salt levels, allowing them to live in environments where no other stingray dares to go. And these guys? They are no joke. Meet the giant freshwater stingray, found in the rivers of Thailand, Cambodia, and Indonesia. This thing is so ridiculously massive that fishermen have pulled up 16-foot-wide individuals weighing over 300 pounds. Imagine fishing in a peaceful river, expecting a normal little catfish, and suddenly you reel in a creature the size of a car. And the scariest part? It has one of the longest and deadliest barbs of any stingray on Earth. While most ocean stingrays have a barb that's a few inches long, the giant freshwater stingray's barb can grow up to 15 inches. That's basically a dagger attached to a swimming pancake. Now if you're thinking, oh great, now I have to worry about stingrays in rivers too. Don't panic, they're not aggressive. Just like their saltwater relatives, these stingrays don't go looking for trouble. They prefer to spend their time buried in the riverbed, minding their own business like a bunch of underwater introverts. But here's where things get wild. Some species of freshwater stingrays, like the Potamotrigon stingrays of the Amazon, have started showing up in places they don't belong. How? The pet trade. People see these little spotted stingrays in aquariums, think, oh wow, that would look amazing in my fish tank, and take them home. But then, surprise, surprise, the stingray grows too big, starts eating all the other fish, and suddenly, someone dumps it in the nearest river. And guess what? Some of these stingrays survive. In fact, they don't just survive, they thrive. There have been reports of freshwater stingrays showing up in rivers in Florida, Japan, and even Europe. These things are spreading like aquatic squatters, setting up shop in new territories and adapting to environments they were never supposed to be in. But let's be real, it's kind of impressive. Most fish struggle if they're moved from salt water to freshwater. But these stingrays are just built different. They've evolved to handle massive environmental changes, shifting between murky river systems, fast-moving currents, and even seasonal droughts. Some species can survive for weeks in wet mud when their rivers dry up, waiting for the next big rain to flood the area again. That's some next-level survival instinct. But the real question is, how far will they go? Could we see freshwater stingrays popping up in even more places? Could they start evolving into new species that take over lakes, swamps, and maybe even man-made reservoirs? If history has taught us anything, it's that stingrays adapt. They've been around since before the dinosaurs. They've survived mass extinctions. They've moved from the oceans to rivers. And now, they might just be coming to a freshwater system near you. All right, time to talk about the ultimate showdown. Because while stingrays and manta rays may be stealthy, venomous, and built like nature's most aerodynamic pancakes, they are not invincible. Yeah, I know, shocking. You'd think a creature with venomous barbs, electric powers, and the ability to disappear into the sand would be untouchable. But nature doesn't care about your fancy adaptations. Everything has a predator. And for stingrays, their enemies are absolute nightmares. Let's start with the most obvious threat: sharks. Now, it's not all sharks. Some species, like nurse sharks, are way too lazy to even bother chasing a stingray. But then you've got bull sharks, tiger sharks, and hammerheads, and these guys? They love a good stingray snack. Hammerheads in particular are like the FBI's most wanted predators for stingrays. They've evolved those weird, alien-looking heads specifically to hunt them. The shape of their skull gives them extra-wide vision and insane electroreception, meaning they can literally sense stingrays hiding under the sand. Picture this. You're a stingray, perfectly camouflaged, buried under the seafloor, thinking you're safe. Then, out of nowhere, a hammerhead swoops down, scans the sand like a freaking radar system, and suddenly, bam! Your lunch. It's brutal. And it gets worse. Because if you thought sharks were bad, wait until you hear about orcas. Yeah, killer whales eat stingrays too. And not just casually, they absolutely annihilate them. Unlike sharks, which use speed and brute force, orcas play mind games with their prey. They'll stalk a stingray, grab it by the tail, and then flip it upside down. Why? Because when stingrays get flipped over, they go into a catatonic state. It's called tonic immobility, and it basically means their nervous system completely shuts down when they're upside down. Imagine getting paralyzed just because someone turned you the wrong way. It's like an off switch for stingrays. Orcas know this. They're not just strong, they're smart. They literally flip stingrays over on purpose to immobilize them before ripping them apart. And if that wasn't terrifying enough, let me introduce you to the stealthiest stingray predator of them all: gigantic saltwater crocodiles. Oh yeah, crocs eat stingrays too. Because why not? As if saltwater crocodiles weren't terrifying enough, these prehistoric monsters, who by the way can grow up to 23 feet long, have been spotted chomping down on stingrays like chewy snacks. Imagine swimming near a mangrove in Australia, thinking you're safe, and suddenly a croc explodes out of the water and takes out a stingray right in front of you. Just another day in everything in Australia wants to kill you land. But here's the most unexpected stingray predator: giant squids. Yes, squid eat stingrays, and not just any squid. The deep-sea tentacle-covered nightmares that scientists barely know anything about. There have been deep-sea reports of rays being attacked by squids in total darkness, their bodies covered in circular sucker marks as proof that they lost a battle with an 8-armed monster. I don't know about you, but getting dragged into the abyss by a giant squid sounds like one of the worst ways to go. So let's recap. Sharks, especially hammerheads, are basically stingray-seeking missiles. Orcas are playing 4D chess, flipping stingrays upside down to paralyze them. Saltwater crocodiles will literally eat anything, including stingrays. Deep-sea squid are just straight-up tentacled nightmares. Stingrays may be badass, but the ocean is full of monsters that don't care. And that's why stingrays had to evolve some serious survival tactics. All right, we've seen how stingrays are basically on every predator's favorite meals menu, from sharks with built-in stingray radar to orcas that paralyze them for fun. But stingrays didn't survive millions of years just by rolling over and accepting their fate. Oh no, these guys have survival tactics that put action movie escape scenes to shame. First up, The disappearing act. You ever play hide and seek with someone so good at hiding that you actually get mad? That's stingrays. They are absolute masters of camouflage. They don't just sit in the sand and hope you don't notice them. They bury themselves completely, leaving only their creepy little eyes sticking out. It's like they turn into the sand itself. And guess what? It works. Even hammerheads, who were literally designed to hunt them, sometimes miss them. And speaking of sand, let's talk about the dust bomb escape move. If a predator does find them, stingrays have a backup plan. They whip their wings and create a literal explosion of sand in the water, blinding their attacker long enough to make a clean getaway. It's like throwing a smoke bomb in a fight, except stingrays do it with their faces, and if that doesn't work, they go full speed demon. Most people think of stingrays as slow and lazy, just gliding around like they're on vacation. But when they need to, they can absolutely book it. With a few powerful flaps of their wing-like fins, they can blast forward at high speeds, zigzagging through the water like an underwater fighter jet. Sharks might be fast, but stingrays, they can outmaneuver them like pros. And then, of course, there's the nuclear option, the sting. This is the moment where stingrays go, "I warned you." That barb on their tail, it's not just for decoration. If a predator, or an unlucky human, pushes their luck, the stingray whips that tail up and delivers a venomous stab. And listen, this is not a fun time. The barb isn't just sharp, it's also serrated, meaning once it goes in, pulling it out makes things even worse. It's like a fish hook, except it's attached to an angry pancake that just got stepped on. And then there's the venom. Stingray venom isn't designed to kill, it's designed to ruin your day. It causes intense, burning pain that can last for hours, massive swelling around the wound, muscle cramps that make you feel like you've been electrocuted, and in some cases even temporary paralysis. Most predators learn very quickly that messing with a stingray is a bad idea. But here's the wildest part. Some stingrays don't even need a tail barb to be dangerous. Now, if you thought stingrays were impressive with their venomous barbs and escape tricks, wait until you hear about their supercharged cousins, the electric rays. These guys don't need stingers, sharp teeth, or speed. They have something way cooler, built-in electricity. That's right. These stingray relatives can generate actual electric shocks, just like an underwater Pikachu. And they use this natural taser for everything from hunting to self-defense to, presumably, keeping nosy scientists at a safe distance. Electric rays are like the mad scientists of the ray family. They have special organs packed with electrocytes, which are basically tiny biological batteries. When they fire up these cells, they can produce a powerful shock, some species delivering up to 220 volts. To put that into perspective, that's enough to knock out a grown adult or give a predator a very bad day. But here's the best part. They control it. They can send out small, gentle electric pulses to sense their surroundings, like an underwater radar system. Or, when needed, they can crank up the voltage and deliver a shock strong enough to stun or even kill small prey. It's basically a built-in electric fence they can turn on and off whenever they want. Now, unlike their stingray cousins who love hanging out on sandy seafloors, electric rays prefer deeper waters, lurking in the shadows like underwater supervillains. They're not particularly fast or aggressive, but that doesn't matter. They don't need to chase anything. All they have to do is get close enough to zap their target and boom, instant knockout. And let's talk about how weird they look. Imagine a stingray that got squished into a perfect circle, lost its tail weapon, and decided to just sit there looking mildly unimpressed with the world. That's an electric ray. They don't have the same sleek, majestic look as manta rays or the ninja-like agility of stingrays. They're just round, flat, and full of volts. But don't let their unimpressive appearance fool you. Ancient Romans knew about these creatures and actually used them for pain relief. No, seriously, people would literally put their feet on electric rays to numb injuries with the shocks. This was basically the world's first electrotherapy. Imagine a Roman doctor being like, "Ah, yes, your leg is broken. Just stick it in the water and wait for nature's defibrillator to zap you." And here's where things get even crazier. Some electric rays ambush prey in the most chaotic way possible. They bury themselves in the sand and just wait. Then, when a fish swims too close, they launch themselves upward, wrap around their victim like a living stun gun, and electrocute it into submission. It's like a horror movie jump scare, but in the ocean. And if that wasn't unsettling enough, some scientists believe that electric rays might be able to communicate with their shocks. Like, imagine being an electric ray and zapping out a Morse code message to your buddies. That's next level stuff. Now, while electric rays are shocking, pun intended, they're not the only rays with strange abilities. Some rays, like spotted eagle rays, can jump out of the water like flying fish. Others have jaw-crushing strength that lets them break open the toughest shellfish like they're chewing on popcorn. But if we're talking about the most unique, bizarre, and downright insane adaptations in the ray family, there's one more species we need to talk about. All right, if you thought stingrays were done surprising you, hold on to your snorkel, because we're about to talk about a stingray so bizarre, so unbelievably different from the others, that it might just make you question reality. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the stingray that walks. Yes, you heard that right. While most rays spend their time gliding through the water like underwater UFOs, there's a special group of stingrays that have decided swimming is overrated, and instead, they prefer to crawl around the seafloor on foot. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait, stingrays don't have feet. And you're right. But these little rebels have figured out how to use their pelvic fins like legs, pushing themselves forward one step at a time. If you ever see a video of this, it looks like a pancake doing a military crawl. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And here's the best part. It's not just one weird stingray species doing this. Multiple types of stingrays have developed the ability to walk along the ocean floor. Some of them use it to sneak up on prey, others use it to save energy, and a few species do it just because they can. Scientists were so baffled by this behavior that they actually put stingrays in special test tanks to see how well they could walk. And guess what? They crushed it. Turns out stingrays are surprisingly efficient walkers, proving that they're not just good at swimming, they're basically part-time land animals now. And here's where things get even crazier. Some researchers believe that walking stingrays could be a glimpse into the past, showing how ancient fish might have started evolving to walk on land. That's right. Before the first land animals ever dragged themselves out of the ocean, some of their ancestors might have looked a lot like these weird little crawling stingrays. So let's just take a moment to appreciate how ridiculously adaptable stingrays are. Some can shock you with electricity. Some can jump out of the water like acrobats. Some can blend into the sand like ghosts. And now we've got stingrays out here walking like they pay rent on the seafloor. But as mind-blowing as these adaptations are, stingrays are facing one enemy they can't camouflage, outswim, or electrocute: humans. For millions of years, stingrays and their manta ray cousins have survived everything the ocean has thrown at them. Prehistoric sea monsters, mass extinctions, hungry sharks, sneaky orcas, even giant squid wrestling matches in the abyss. But there's one predator they never saw coming. And it's not faster, stronger, or even particularly graceful in the water. It's us. Humans have managed to become the biggest threat to stingrays in ways that nature could have never prepared them for. And it's not just one thing. It's a whole cocktail of chaos that's pushing some stingray populations to the brink. First up, let's talk about fishing. Now, most people think of overfishing as a problem for sharks, tuna, or other big-name fish. But stingrays? They're getting caught up in it too. In many places, stingrays are caught by accident in massive fishing nets meant for other species. This is called bycatch, and it's basically an aquatic version of oops, wrong target. But for the stingrays, there's no do-over. By the time they're hauled up onto a boat, many don't survive, and even the ones that do are often discarded like useless trash. And if you think that's bad, it gets worse, because in some parts of the world, stingrays are actually being targeted on purpose. Certain cultures believe that stingray gill plates, the part they use to breathe, have magical healing properties. Spoiler alert, they don't. But that hasn't stopped the demand, leading to thousands of stingrays being slaughtered for nothing more than a baseless myth. And it's not just the fishing industry that's a problem. Habitat destruction is another silent killer. Stingrays rely on healthy coral reefs, mangroves, and seagrass beds to survive. These are their hunting grounds, their nurseries, and their safe zones. But guess what? Humans are tearing those places apart like we're remodeling the ocean without a permit. Mangroves are being bulldozed to make room for beach resorts. Seagrass beds are dying off thanks to pollution. Coral reefs are bleaching out and crumbling from climate change. And when stingrays lose their homes, they don't get a moving truck. They just die out. And speaking of climate change, let's talk about the heat. The ocean is getting warmer, and that's bad news for stingrays. Many species rely on very specific water temperatures to survive. If the ocean gets too hot, their food sources start disappearing, their breeding cycles get thrown off, and in some cases, they just straight up leave entire regions. Now, you'd think that with all this happening, stingrays would at least be safe from direct human attacks, right? Oh, you sweet summer child. Some places have actual tournaments where people go out and kill stingrays for sport. No reason, just pure destruction for entertainment. These contests treat stingrays like pests, as if they're some kind of underwater cockroach, instead of the ancient, intelligent, highly evolved creatures that they are. And the worst part? Most people don't even know this is happening. Stingrays don't get the same spotlight as sharks, dolphins, or sea turtles. There are no major Hollywood movies about saving the stingrays. No global outcry every time one is killed. They suffer in silence. But here's the good news. It's not too late. Scientists, conservationists, and everyday ocean lovers are fighting back. Marine protected areas are being created to keep stingrays safe from overfishing. Ecotourism programs are teaching people to respect stingrays instead of fearing them. Conservationists are tagging and tracking stingray populations to better understand their movements and how to protect them. And the best part, you don't need to be a marine biologist to help. If you travel, choose eco-friendly dive tours that support stingray conservation instead of harming them. If you see stingrays being sold as medicine, know that it's a scam. If you ever get the chance to swim with stingrays, respect their space. No touching, no harassing, just observing these incredible creatures the way they were meant to be seen. Because here's the truth. Stingrays have been around for hundreds of millions of years. They survived the extinction of the dinosaurs, the rise and fall of prehistoric sea monsters, the wrath of hammerheads and orcas. The only thing that could truly wipe them out is us. But if we choose to protect them instead, then maybe, just maybe, these underwater legends will keep gliding through the ocean for millions of years to come. And that is a much better ending to their story.